So let's say, for example, I want to raise my net worth by an extra $10,000. Now, I'm already debt-free and I already have my emergency fund in place. So let's just go ahead and work with a $10,000 figure for the next 12 months. Now, cash flow, which is the difference between my income and my expenses, is going to be this $833. And if I rearrange this equation and solve for E, which would be my living expenses, my living expenses can't exceed whatever my monthly take-home pay is minus that $833 that I'm going to be saving for my $10,000 goal. And let's just say for this example that my take-home pay after taxes is about $3,500. So this means in order for me to reach my goal in 12 months, my monthly expenses cannot exceed $2,667. But let's say I go through all of my bills for the last several months and I find a running average, and it turns out that my monthly expenses are not quite that. And it turns out that my actual expenses, or EA in this case, is $3,167, which means that I have about $500 extra in cash flow to make up the difference. Here's a strategy that I employ when it comes to looking at how to raise the extra cash flow in order to meet any kind of money goals. My overall goal is to raise cash flow, in this case by an extra $500 per month. So I have two variables that I can play with. I can lower E and I can raise I. So if I start off by looking at lowering my expenses, here's the strategy that I usually employ. I imagine a box, and this is what would be called your budget. I have my income streams coming in on the left, and everything over here on the right are all the expenses, or all the money that's leaving the budget. So some of these expenses are things like, rent, food, transportation, entertainment, utilities, cable, water, normal bills, normal necessities that I normally have, say, on a month-to-month basis. Now, being the engineer and the nerd that I am, I look at these arrows and the size of these arrows that represent essentially the amount of money that would be going in and out of the system. So, for example, if you were to look at this, and let's take a look at the rent arrow. If you looked at the rent arrow and you put it up here, and then if you added the food arrow, you'd go like this. And let's say you added a utilities arrow like that, and then a few other arrows that might be here. This entire length right here, which could be this entire arrow, could be represented by one arrow that's this long. And the length of this arrow basically represents how much money you have, in this case, leaving the system, as just with the case with the income. The length of the arrow is how much money is coming into the budget. So when it comes to lowering expenses like this, I can take two different approaches. I can either eliminate arrows on the right-hand side, or I can shrink them. And the first thing I'm going to do is try to eliminate arrows. So that would be anything that's basically redundant. So like I have this Netflix and this HBO right here, pretty much do the same thing. It's a monthly subscription for entertainment. So I could eliminate one of them. So what I'll do is I'll actually go ahead and eliminate HBO. Another arrow that I'm going to get rid of is this blank one down here, which basically would represent any kind of like blow money or miscellaneous. I'm going to use my entertainment to take care of that. So I don't need an extra arrow to account for, again, the same thing. All right, so this is looking pretty good. I've already eliminated some arrows that I no longer need that are basically duplicates. So now what's left over is for me to reduce the arrows that are left over. So an example with that would be with food. I can reduce this or shrink it by, instead of doing, say, around $400 or $500 a month in food, I can shrink it down to, say, $200 or $300, which would reduce the arrow. I can haggle with my phone company to see if I can't get a better plan, or at least I can haggle with them based off of some competitors. So I can try and at least get that one reduced. I'm going to look and see if there's any kind of public transportation or any ride-sharing programs that I can be a part of to reduce my transportation costs. I'm going to go through all of these arrows and see what I can do to shrink any of them up. And the biggest contributors to this are usually the rent, food, and transportation. And to reduce the rent, that might actually mean moving to a place that's smaller rent. And if I'm lucky, that might mean that I can move to a place that's, say, closer to work, which I might be able to then hit rent and transportation. So this way I can reduce both of those in one fell swoop. Just like I was able to reduce my expenses by eliminating arrows and shrinking what's left over, I can now raise my income, but only this time I'm going to take what's currently there and I'm going to double down on it, and I'm going to try to raise the income by stretching that arrow. Now, income streams will contribute money to my budget in different ways, but right now let's just use a regular old job that makes an hourly wage. So that means that the amount of income that you bring in would be equal to some kind of rate that you would make times the hours that you work that rate. What this is telling me is I have two factors that I have control over. That is the rate at which I work, X number of dollars per hour, and in the number of hours that I can work. In order for me to raise my rate, I would need to get a raise somehow. Maybe I talk to my manager and try to get a raise, or maybe I transfer to a new department that pays more, or that might even mean finding a new job that actually just has a higher rate. Or the other way I can raise this income stream is I can work more hours. So that would mean maybe I'm doing overtime, or if I'm not working a full 40 hours a week, I start actually working a full 40 hours a week. Or maybe I pick up extra shifts depending on what kind of job that I'm working. But let's just say that I'm working a full-time job and there is no wiggle room. I have gone to my manager and he says, nope, there's absolutely no way. We have no more money in the budget, so we can't give you a pay raise. So now, what do I have left over? Well, now I'm gonna have to rely on another income source, or maybe even another income stream right here. And maybe that income stream is something that I already have. So if I already have that, say like an eBay store, or maybe an Etsy shop, or some other form of online revenue that I can bring in, I can take that and extend that using roughly the same idea. And it just so happens that I have an eBay store where I flip items as a side hustle. But the income stream is not gonna be any hourly rate times my time, because that's not what I'm using for that income stream. Instead, it's gonna be the price of whatever the item is, or items that I might happen to sell, times however many items I sell, or the quantity. And if I want to increase the amount of money that I bring in, I either increase my price, which might be pretty difficult because a lot of the items that I sell have a fair market value, so people are only going to really pay for this stuff based off of what they feel it's valued. So that might not really be that great of an option, which means that my other option, my only leftover factor, is my quantity. And I need to start meaning that I need to start selling more of whatever it is that I'm selling on my store. So now that I know what my goal is, which is to raise an extra $10,000 and add it to my net worth in the next 12 months, and after some budgeting, I found out that I'm gonna need about another $500 in cash flow per month, I'm now gonna write out my goal in the following format: from X to Y by Z. In other words, I wanna earn an extra $10,000 over the next 12 months by increasing my monthly cash flow by $500. My ultimate goal is to get more money in this case, I think would be a pretty good assumption for any goal. But I can't control how much money actually comes in my budget, and I can't control what items sell. Now I need to increase the quantity of everything that I'm selling in the store, because that's what will actually get me more money. So this means in order for me to get more money, I need to get more sales. Again, I don't have any direct control over sales. I don't tell someone to click buy now, or I'm not even eBay. I can't even decide when to show or what items to show to potential buyers. This is all kind of outside of my realm of control. So if I want to increase my sales, the thing that I need to look forward to, or the thing that is actually leading up to increasing my sales, are my listings. And now we're talking, because see, listings, I have control over those. I can decide how many of those I put up per day. I can decide how I put them up. I can decide when they go up, and I can decide when I go back and make any corrections that I might need. Since I know that listings are a direct influence on how many sales I'm going to have, which directly influences how much money I'm going to make, that's the factor that I have 100% control over and that I want to monitor. So I'll go ahead and make, let's say, I want to make sure that I'm listing roughly between 3 to 5 new listings per day. And then I'm gonna go back and look at between, let's say, 5 to 6 old listings per day and update them as needed. And then what I'll do is I'll make a little scorecard right here that actually tracks each of these, so that this way I can stay motivated and see my progress. So if I'm gonna do 3 to 5, let's say go 1, 2, 3, I'll put a little, say, little dashed line right here. And that will be a little target line. And each day that goes on, I will make a little mark just to make sure that I'm actually hitting whatever it is. And I'll see that I'll probably be right around this little area. And by seeing these little dots and seeing this little tracker, I know that I'm actually doing what I said I was going to do, right? And just to be consistency, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere like around here. So this would be our the old ones, and this would be the new ones. So I want to make sure that I'm also tracking up here as well for all of these, so I can kind of get a little average like that, and then I'll probably see something like this. And to put a little bit of whipped cream on this final bit, I'll have one final scorecard up here. And this will be, say, number of sales, or it can even actually be money if I want to. And it will be the same number of days that corresponds down here. But this is probably going to end up doing something like this. It'll probably start off like this, a little bit slow like this, pretty consistent, might even drop a little bit. But then as my behaviors of actually making listings and checking up on listings improves, this will start going up and up and up and up like that. And so some of the ways that I might be influencing a lot of this, especially when it comes to the old items, is I'll go back into listings and check to see if there's anybody that's been watching it. So what eBay will allow me to do is see if there's any watchers for a particular item. And usually if I see an item that has roughly, say, between at least over 2 watchers, maybe sometimes 2 to 3 watchers, that tells me that there's interest in the item, but my price is a little bit too high. So that'll incentivize me to either lower the price or run, usually what I like to do is run a weekend sale. So it's all about being very specific with your goals and naming what you want, as well as being very intentional and making sure that you identify the key factors that have a direct relationship and influence on what you're trying to increase, whether that be money or profit or sales or what have you. And the same strategy works if you're on the Dave Ramsey baby steps and you want to add, say, an extra couple $1,000s or even $10,000 to your snowball, or you want to add an extra couple $1,000s or $10,000 to your emergency fund. It's the same strategy. Identify what the key factors are and that you have direct influence, and go after those, and then also make sure that you have some kind of a tracker, some kind of visual scoreboard that allows you to see how your progress is doing. Hope you have a great end of the week and an amazing weekend, and I will talk with you guys later. Thanks for watching.